The sky was dying. Once bright and filled with colors, now it was gray and heavy, like an old wound that never healed. The last sun of the planet Arkin dimmed behind layers of smoke and dust. Cities lay in silence, broken towers leaning over empty streets. The people of Arkin had stopped speaking of tomorrow. They only waited for the end. Commander Luri stood on the roof of the old command center, her armor scratched and faded, her eyes lost in the endless gray sky. She had fought for years, but even she could feel hope slipping away. Their defenses were gone, their ships destroyed, and the enemy's shadow grew closer every day. No signal came from the stars anymore. The old alliances had fallen apart, one by one, until Arkin was left alone. She held a small metal pendant in her hand, a piece of old technology from the forgotten times. On it was engraved one word, one symbol that most now considered only a myth: humanity. Her grandmother once told her stories about them, the ancient protectors who rose when all others fell. But those were bedtime tales for children, nothing more. Humanity had vanished from the galaxy long ago. No one had seen them for centuries. Still, sometimes at night, Luri would look up at the stars and whisper, "If you're out there, if you can hear us, please, come back." But the stars never answered. The war had been brutal. The Scarth Dominion had conquered almost every system, burning worlds, enslaving species, and leaving nothing but dust behind. Arkin was one of the last free planets, but free had lost its meaning. Their skies were filled with ash, and their oceans boiled from orbital strikes. Every ship they launched was hunted and destroyed. Even the children no longer cried, because there was no one left to listen. Luri walked through the ruined command hall, walls cracked, lights flickering. A few soldiers still remained, weak, hungry, their eyes hollow. "Commander," one of them said, "the scanners picked something up in the upper atmosphere." Her heart jumped. "Is it them?" He shook his head slowly. "Unknown, no transponder, no signal, just falling." "Falling?" she repeated, her voice a whisper. They rushed to the observation deck. Through the thick layer of clouds, streaks of light began to appear. At first, they looked like meteors, fiery trails cutting through the sky. But these weren't random. They were in formation, controlled, purposeful. The ground began to shake as one of the lights broke through the clouds, screaming like thunder. It struck the plains beyond the city with a sound like the roar of a god. Everyone froze, staring. The commander's breath caught in her throat. "What is that?" one soldier asked. Luri's voice trembled. "Pods," she said, "drop pods." No one believed her, but deep inside, her heart knew. Her grandmother's words echoed again. "When the skies burn, humanity will return." The second pod crashed even closer, throwing waves of dust into the air. The commander ran outside, her soldiers following behind. The earth was cracked and glowing from the heat, smoke rising like a wall. And then, the door of the pod opened. Out stepped a figure tall and armored, its face hidden behind a dark helmet. The armor was old yet powerful, painted in deep silver and blue. Across the chest was a single faded emblem, a blue circle with white wings. The figure looked around slowly, scanning the ruins. Then, with a voice that carried strength and sorrow, it spoke. "We heard your signal." The soldiers fell silent, unable to breathe. Luri stepped closer, eyes wide, her voice shaking. "Who are you?" she asked. The figure lifted its helmet slightly, revealing human eyes, tired but alive. "I am Captain Reyes," he said quietly, "from Earth." The word hung in the air like thunder. Earth, the lost homeworld, the myth, the memory. No one dared to move. Even the wind seemed to stop. Then another pod landed, and another, until the horizon burned with fire and light. Luri fell to her knees, tears mixing with dust. "They came back," she whispered. Her soldiers looked to the sky in silence. Above them, hundreds of glowing trails fell like shooting stars. And for the first time in years, the people of Arkin felt something they had forgotten. Hope. The dust still hung in the air, thick and glowing from the fire of the crash. Luri stood frozen as the tall human removed his helmet completely, revealing a weathered face marked with battle scars, and eyes that carried the weight of centuries. Behind him, more drop pods opened one by one, each releasing armored figures that stepped out with precision and purpose. Their armor was dented, scorched, and yet still shining faintly beneath the layers of ash. They moved like soldiers who had done this 1,000 times before. Luri could hardly believe her eyes. For years she had been told that humans were gone, wiped out in the final war that ended the first galactic era. But here they were, flesh and blood, walking legends under a dying sky. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "We thought Earth was destroyed." Captain Reyes turned to her, his tone calm but heavy. "It nearly was," he said. "But we rebuilt, underground, hidden from the stars, waiting for the call." He looked up at the dark clouds, his gaze sharp and filled with memory. "And now, we heard it." The other soldiers began to secure the area, setting up strange devices that pulsed with soft blue light. Machines unfolded from the pods, tall drones scanning the horizon, small bots repairing equipment, and one projecting a holographic globe filled with tactical data. It was technology far beyond anything Luri had ever seen, elegant yet terrifying in its power. Her soldiers watched in silence, unsure whether to trust or fear these new arrivals. Suddenly, a loud alarm echoed through the damaged city. A lookout shouted from the tower, "Incoming crafts, Scarth." Everyone turned toward the sky, where dark shapes began descending through the clouds, the enemy's signature red glow spreading like fire. Reyes didn't hesitate, his command voice cutting through the chaos. "Form perimeter defense, drones forward, arc shields active." His soldiers obeyed instantly, lines of blue energy crackling into existence as the first Scarth ships opened fire. Luri had seen countless battles, but never one like this. The humans moved with perfect coordination, their weapons releasing blinding streams of light that tore through enemy armor. Every shot was precise, every movement synchronized. When one human fell, two others stepped forward without a word. The drop pods that once fell from the sky now became defense turrets, firing with deadly accuracy. Within minutes, the first wave of the Scarth fleet was in ruins, burning wreckage falling across the plains. Luri's soldiers stared in awe. What they had struggled to survive against for years, the humans had destroyed in less than 10 minutes. She turned to Captain Reyes, voice shaking. "How did you do this? What are you?" He simply answered, "We're what you made us remember to be." When the battle ended, the silence felt unreal. The human soldiers began helping the wounded, sharing supplies, and deploying med drones that healed with glowing nanotech. Luri watched as one of her injured soldiers gasped in pain, only for a human medic to kneel beside him, injecting something clear and whispering softly, "You're going to be fine." It was not the voice of a conqueror. It was the voice of someone who had seen too much loss. As night fell, the fires dimmed, and the humans built a small camp beside the wrecked city. Luri approached Reyes once more. "Why come back now?" she asked. "After so long. Why help us?" Reyes looked into the distance, his expression unreadable. "Because we heard your signal, Commander," he said quietly. "The same kind of signal we once ignored when others called for help. We will not make that mistake again." The stars above flickered faintly, as if listening. Luri followed his gaze upward, feeling something warm rise inside her chest. For the first time, she believed the stories might be true. Humans didn't just fight. They endured. They rebuilt. They returned when no one else could. Reyes turned to her once more, his voice low but firm. "We're not here to rule. We're here to stand beside you." He paused, letting the silence stretch before adding, "Because when all was lost, someone had to fall from the stars to remind the galaxy what hope looks like." Luri said nothing, only nodded, as the humans raised their banner over the ruins, an old symbol of Earth, weathered yet unbroken. And beneath that faded blue and white emblem, a new alliance began. In the glow of the fires, she whispered to herself, "They came back for us." The next morning came with a cold, metallic sky. Smoke still drifted across the plains where the battle had ended. Arkan was alive, but barely. Human ships hovered silently above the surface, their hulls glowing faintly blue as repair drones swarmed around them. To the people of Arkan, it looked like a miracle. To the humans, it was only the beginning. Commander Luri walked through the human camp, her eyes wide with disbelief. Everywhere she looked, humans worked with quiet purpose, repairing broken generators, purifying water, rebuilding walls that had fallen years ago. Children from nearby villages peeked from behind debris, watching the newcomers with wonder and fear. When a human soldier noticed them, he knelt, removing his helmet, smiling softly as he handed one of the children a piece of warm bread. The child's mother began to cry, whispering, "They feed us. They really feed us." Captain Reyes stood beside a holomap glowing in the air, surrounded by both human officers and alien leaders. He spoke calmly, explaining how the Scarth fleets had spread across nearby systems, how they consumed everything they touched. Luri listened closely, but one question kept burning in her mind. "Why risk yourselves for us?" she asked at last. Reyes met her gaze, his eyes tired but steady. "Because we remember what it felt like when no one came for us," he said. "We're not saving you out of mercy. We're doing it because we promised ourselves never to turn away again." The word spread quickly among the soldiers and the civilians. Stories began to rise. Humans walking into fire, humans standing against fleets alone, humans refusing to abandon anyone. Hope was growing again, fragile but real. Yet not everyone welcomed them. In the far councils of Arkan's surviving cities, whispers turned to fear. Some leaders believed the humans had come to claim the planet, to rebuild an empire long forgotten. Others said the humans were ghosts, machines wearing human faces. And some simply envied them, for doing in a day what they couldn't in a decade. Late that night, Luri was summoned to a secret meeting. The council members sat around a dim table, their faces hidden in the shadows. "They are dangerous," one said. "You've seen their power, their weapons, their control. They could destroy us whenever they wish." Another added, "They speak of peace, but peace always comes with a price." Luri listened, her jaw tight. "They saved our world," she said quietly. "They fought when we couldn't. They gave us food and medicine. They gave us dependency." Another snapped, "And soon they'll demand loyalty." Luri left the meeting with her heart heavy. Outside, she looked up at the night sky, where human ships glowed softly like fallen stars. Part of her feared the council might be right. But when she saw human engineers working beside her people, laughing, fixing old machines together, she knew the truth. The humans weren't here to conquer. They were here to heal. Captain Reyes joined her on the cliffside, the wind sharp and cold. "You heard them," he said quietly. "They don't trust us yet." Luri nodded. "They fear what they can't understand." He looked down at the rebuilt city lights flickering faintly. "They're right to fear," he admitted. "Humans have a long history of turning saviors into conquerors. I won't let that happen again." The silence stretched between them, filled only by the soft hum of ships overhead. Then a sudden beep echoed from Reyes' wrist device. He frowned, tapping the screen. A red signal pulsed rapidly, a distress beacon, not from Arkan, but from deep space. Luri leaned closer. "What is it?" Reyes' voice dropped. "An old code, a human code, from one of our lost fleets." The air around them grew colder. The stars above seemed to shift. If that signal was real, it meant something impossible. More humans were out there, fighting, surviving, or calling for help. But it also meant something else. Someone knew they had returned. And the Scarth would not ignore that. Reyes closed the screen, his eyes hardening. "Prepare your people, Commander," he said. This was only the first storm. Luri nodded slowly, feeling the chill of those words sink deep. As lightning flashed across the clouds and thunder rolled over the city, she whispered to herself, "They came to save us, but now the galaxy will come for them." Above the horizon, dark shapes began to gather. The storm was returning, and this time, it wasn't weather. It was war. The signal changed everything. What had begun as a story of rescue now turned into a mystery. For days, Captain Reyes studied the ancient human code, his eyes burning with sleepless nights. It was an old distress call, one used centuries ago by the Terran Expeditionary Forces during the last galactic war. It shouldn't exist anymore, yet there it was, faint, repeating every few hours, calling from deep space. Commander Luri watched him work. "What if it's a trap?" she asked. "The Scarth could be mimicking your signal." Reyes nodded slowly. "I considered that, but no one else could know this encryption." He looked up at the holographic map floating above the table, pointing at a dying star cluster on the outer rim. "The signal's coming from there," he said, "from a system we once called Helion Reach." The name meant nothing to Luri, but she saw the way his voice changed when he said it. It wasn't just a location, it was a wound. She stepped closer. You've been there before, haven't you? Reyes hesitated, his jaw tightening. Yes, he said quietly. That's where we lost everything. That night, the skies above Arkin glowed with the movement of ships. Human dropships lifted off, engines roaring, their trails cutting through the clouds like silver veins. The world below watched in awe, as if history itself had come alive again. Luri stood at the edge of the launch platform, her heart heavy. Be careful, Captain, she said. You just returned to the stars, don't let them take you away again. Reyes smiled faintly beneath his helmet. If we don't face our past, Commander, it will come to face us. Hours later, the fleet entered the dark stretch of space known as the Silent Belt. There were no stars, no signals, only the whisper of dead transmissions bouncing through the void. Inside the human command ship, lights flickered as the scanners reached out, searching for the lost source. Then they found it. A massive derelict ship floated ahead, half torn apart, its surface scarred by plasma fire, its hull still bearing the faded markings of Earth's flag. The Aegis Dawn, once the pride of humanity's fleet, now a drifting tomb. Reyes and his team boarded the wreck. Dust floated like ash inside the corridors. Every step echoed in silence. Old banners hung shredded, and walls bore marks of desperate defense. One soldier whispered, "There are still bodies here," and bowed his head. Reyes placed his hand on the wall, feeling the cold metal beneath his glove. "These were our brothers," he murmured. "They fought until the end." As they reached the central command chamber, a flicker of light caught their eyes. A single console still pulsed with power. When Reyes activated it, a projection appeared, an old recording, grainy and weak. A human officer spoke in a trembling voice. "To whoever finds this, we held Helion Reach for as long as we could. The Scarth unleashed something new, something alive, not machines, not soldiers, a living weapon." The transmission ended with static. Luri, who was watching remotely from Arkin, felt a chill. What did he mean? Something alive? She asked through the calm. Reyes didn't answer at first. He turned slowly, his eyes fixed on a dark corridor behind him. Because from deep within the ship, something moved. A shadow glided across the floor, silent and smooth. Then another. The team raised their weapons, blue lights cutting through the dust. Out of the dark came creatures half organic, half machine, their bodies pulsing with red veins of energy. Reyes whispered, "They adapted." The Scarth had learned from their old enemies. They had rebuilt their weapons from human remains. Blaster fire erupted, the halls glowing with explosions. Reyes shouted commands, his soldiers falling back toward the airlock. The creatures screamed in a mix of metal and flesh, crawling across the walls like predators. One lunged, grabbing a soldier, tearing through armor before being blasted apart. The ship shook from the chaos, alarms echoing. "Seal the hatch," Reyes yelled, as fire engulfed the corridor. When they finally escaped, the Aegis Dawn burned silently behind them. Luri's voice came through the calm, trembling. "What happened?" Reyes stared at the wreck through the viewport, his reflection faint against the fire. "They turned our dead into weapons," he said softly. "The Scarth are using humanity's past against us." He looked down at his scarred hands. The ghosts of old wars had returned, and this time they were alive. The world of Arkin trembled again. Above the clouds, flashes of red light shimmered like silent lightning. The Scarth were coming, and this time, they were not sending ships, they were sending swarms. Living machines, born from stolen human DNA and twisted metal, falling through the atmosphere like fire. Commander Luri stood at the main defense post, her eyes fixed on the horizon. She could already see the trails of burning shapes cutting through the sky. Every sensor on the planet screamed warnings. "Impact in 5 minutes," shouted a technician, his voice shaking. The air buzzed with static, the skies rumbling with the sound of descent. Captain Reyes' voice echoed over the calm and steady even as chaos built around them. "All ground units, brace positions, aerial support in motion, we hold this line." Human ships emerged through the clouds, engines roaring like thunder gods. They descended in formation, sleek and battle-scarred, glowing blue symbols of Earth etched across their hulls. Behind them, hundreds of drop pods burned like shooting stars. The people of Arkan looked up in awe. To them, it was as if the heavens themselves had awakened. Children pointed and shouted, "They're falling again. The humans are falling." But this time, it wasn't a rescue, it was war. The first wave hit. Metal and flesh collided in a storm of sound. The Scarth creatures tore through the city walls, screaming in voices that were both mechanical and alive. Human soldiers fought shoulder to shoulder with Arkan's defenders, their rifles blazing streams of blue plasma that burned through armor and bone. Luri charged through the smoke, leading her troops, her blade glowing as she struck a Scarth drone in half. Beside her, a human mech landed with a crash, towering over the battlefield, firing into the swarm. Everywhere, chaos reigned. But within that chaos, there was unity. For the first time, humans and aliens fought not as strangers, but as one army. Luri shouted into her calm, "Reyes, we're being overrun at Sector 9. His voice came through, firm and calm. "Hold for 2 minutes. Commander, I'm sending fire from the heavens." Moments later, the clouds parted. From orbit, massive human warships aimed their cannons downward. The sky turned white as energy beams rained like judgment, tearing through the invading horde. The explosions shook the earth, waves of heat washing across the plains. Luri shielded her eyes, her breath caught between fear and awe. She had never seen such power, devastating and beautiful at the same time. When the dust settled, the battlefield was silent except for the crackling of fire. Bodies of Scarth creatures lay twisted across the scorched ground. Human soldiers moved through the ruins, pulling survivors to safety. One of them knelt beside an injured alien child, offering water and comfort. Luri watched, her chest tightening. This was what made them different, she realized. Humans didn't destroy for glory, they destroyed to protect. High above, Reyes stood on the command deck, staring at the burning sky. His second officer approached. "We lost 2 ships, she said quietly. "Dozens of soldiers gone." Reyes nodded, eyes dark. "They knew the risk," he replied. "Every one of them chose to fall." He looked toward Arkan's surface, where tiny flashes still burned in the distance. "Each flame," he said softly, "is proof that we still remember who we are." On the ground, the surviving troops gathered near the broken walls. Luri approached a fallen drop pod, its door half melted. Inside, she found the flag of Earth, burned but still intact. She lifted it carefully, holding it high so all could see. The soldiers, both human and alien, turned toward it, raising their weapons in salute. The battlefield fell silent again, not from fear, but from reverence. As the night settled, Reyes' final transmission echoed across the airwaves. "We didn't come to rule," he said, his voice steady and strong. "We came to remind the galaxy that even in darkness, humanity still burns bright." Above them, the last trails of falling pods glowed like 1,000 comets crossing the night. And once again, the people of Arkan whispered the words that had become their salvation. When all was lost, humanity fell from the stars to save us. The world was burning again. But this time, the fire was not from invasion. It was from defiance. Every city on Arkan stood lit with blue beacons marking human defense lines. The once broken planet had become a fortress. Above, the night sky glowed red as the largest Scarth fleet ever seen filled the heavens. Commander Luri stood on the tower of the main citadel, her armor scorched, her blade humming faintly with power. She could feel the ground vibrating beneath her feet, the air charged with static. Below her, thousands of soldiers, human and alien alike, stood shoulder to shoulder. Every face reflected the same emotion, not fear, but determination. Captain Reyes' voice came through the comm system, steady as stone. "Today, we fight not for victory, but for meaning," he said. "Even if this is our last stand, we make it count." In orbit, Earth's remaining fleet faced impossible odds. Dozens of enemy carriers, hundreds of drones, thousands of living machines ready to descend. Reyes stood at the command deck of his flagship Vigilant Dawn, his gaze locked on the incoming swarm. "Fire control online," said his officer. "But we're outnumbered 20-1. Reyes nodded slowly. "Then we aim for 20, he said with a faint smile. His fingers hovered over the console. "Begin Operation Phoenix." The ship's engines roared, channeling energy into massive fusion cores. One by one, the human vessels formed a burning ring around the planet, creating a shield of light. From the surface, it looked like a halo, a glowing crown over a dying world. Luri watched in awe. "He's surrounding us with fire," she whispered. Her advisor shook his head. "He's not defending, Commander," he said quietly. "He's preparing to strike." The Scarth Armada advanced, their ships screeching like a storm of metal. The sky turned black as they blotted out the stars. Reyes took a breath, then gave the order, "All batteries, ignite." Every human ship fired at once, beams of blue light tearing through the darkness. The explosions lit the void like sunrise. Scarth ships shattered, one after another, but more kept coming, endless, relentless, alive. On the ground, the battle raged again. Luri led the charge through the ruined streets, her troops firing beside human marines. The air was thick with smoke and energy bursts. A Scarth beast crashed through a building, roaring like thunder. Luri leapt from the rubble, striking with her blade glowing white. Beside her, a human mech dropped from the sky, smashing the creature into the ground. For a brief second, they stood side by side, alien and human, united in one heartbeat. Reyes' ship shuddered under heavy fire, alarms blaring. "Captain, the outer line is collapsing," shouted his officer. Reyes steadied himself, his eyes hard. "Then we take the core down with us." He activated a sequence locked deep within the ship's memory, a last resort, the ancient Terran code for total burn. Every human ship responded with a single word, "Confirmed." Back on Arkin, Luri heard the transmission and froze. She knew what it meant. The humans were going to sacrifice themselves to destroy the enemy fleet. She slammed her fist on the console. "Reyes, stop this," she shouted. "There must be another way." His voice came back through static, calm, almost gentle. "There isn't, Commander, but we'll make sure you live to tell them who we were." Tears burned in her eyes as she watched the halo of ships ignite. One by one, the human vessels began to overheat, their cores glowing brighter than the sun. The light grew until it consumed the sky. Then, with a single unified blast, the entire human fleet exploded in a wave of energy so powerful it tore through the Scarth Armada. The shockwave swept across the planet, shaking mountains and silencing the stars. When the light faded, the heavens were clear. The Scarth were gone. Only burning fragments drifted across the void where a fleet had once stood. Luri fell to her knees, staring at the empty sky, whispering through her tears. They fell again, to save us all. The radios were silent, the stars quiet. But in that silence, the galaxy was reborn. Because from that day onward, every world that had once feared humanity now spoke their name with reverence. Humans did not vanish. They became the fire that protected the night. And even in death, they had won. The sky was quiet again. Where once there had been fire and thunder, now only drifting ashes glowed in the upper atmosphere. For the first time in centuries, the stars above Arkin shone clear and calm. The war was over, but the silence it left behind was almost unbearable. Commander Luri stood on the highest ridge overlooking the plains where the final battle had burned. The ground was still scarred, blackened and cracked, but from the cracks new green shoots had begun to grow. The planet was healing, slowly, painfully, but alive. She held in her hands a piece of scorched metal, the remains of a human insignia, the blue circle with white wings, faded but still visible. Every time she looked at it, her chest ached with both grief and pride. In the weeks that followed, the survivors of Arkin began to rebuild. Towns rose again from rubble, fields reopened, children laughed for the first time in years. But something had changed deep within the hearts of the people. They spoke of the humans not as saviors or warriors, but as family, as legends reborn through sacrifice. Everywhere across the planet, banners of Earth were raised beside the flags of Arkin. Two symbols, side by side, shining beneath the same sun. A great monument was built in the center of the capital. It was a massive tower of silver and glass, reaching toward the stars. At its peak was engraved the final message Captain Reyes had sent before the light consumed the fleet. "We did not come to rule. We came to remind the galaxy that hope never dies." Those words became sacred, taught in every school, whispered in every prayer. One evening, Luri stood before the monument, as the twin moons rose. Around her were thousands of people, humans and aliens who had survived, who had fought side by side. Ships from other worlds had begun to arrive, bringing aid, technology, and above all, respect. Even former enemies of Earth came, their leaders bowing before the monument. They had seen what humanity had done, and they would never forget it. Luri walked up the steps slowly, her long cloak trailing behind her. She placed the broken insignia into the heart of the monument, letting it rest beneath the light. Her voice trembled as she spoke to the crowd. "They fell from the stars not to conquer, but to remind us who we could be," she said. "They burned brighter than any sun, and through their fire, we found ourselves again." From above, drones captured the image of the crowd as every person lifted a torch. Thousands of flames shone together, forming a pattern that could be seen from orbit, a single glowing circle surrounded by wings. Across the galaxy, the broadcast spread to every corner of known space. And so, on that day, the Federation of Dawn was born, a new alliance built upon the ashes of sacrifice. Its first charter carried just 3 words: honor the fallen. Far beyond Arkan, among the debris of shattered ships, a single human beacon still blinked faintly. A distress light, weak but persistent, sending a quiet signal into the void. No one knew if anyone remained to answer it, but the people of Arkan chose to believe. They believed that somewhere, somehow, humanity endured, watching, guiding, waiting for the right moment to return once more. Luri often looked to the stars at night, whispering softly, "Captain Reyes, wherever you are, we remember." And in that moment, a faint streak of light crossed the sky. Some said it was a meteor, others swore it was a sign. But to her, it was a promise that hope would always fall from the heavens when darkness rose. The world turned, the stars burned bright again. And across the endless galaxy, one truth echoed forever. When all was lost, humanity fell from the stars to save them. And through their sacrifice, dawn returned to the universe.